Hey, pool chasers! The Pleatco Perfect Pool Guy and Gal contest is now in the voting stage. Check out the nominees by clicking the link below, and for all other details, check out episode 114 of the podcast. So today we have a very special episode for you. We have been big fans of Oceanside Glass and Tile ever since we first saw it on a job site. There's just something different and very special about the tile when you open the box. Not only do they produce a great product, but they have an amazing story on how they got to be where they are now. As you will hear on the podcast, many of their original beliefs and their culture mentality are still intertwined into the business today. We have learned over the years that when it comes to producing a high-quality product, that the company behind that product has spent a ton of time putting the right systems in place. Oceanside is no different. We discussed their manufacturing process thoroughly, and we think you will agree that it is easy to see why they are so successful. It was a true honor to have them on the podcast, and we hope you enjoy episode 116 with Sean and Brian of Oceanside Glass and Tile.
Welcome to your go-to podcast for the pool and spa industry. My name is Tyler Rasmussen.
And my name is Greg Villafania, and this is the Pool Chasers Podcast. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today, guys.
Yeah, it's great to be online here with you. I wish we were there in person, but thanks for having us.
Same here. So let's just jump right into this and have you both share a little bit about yourselves. And we'll start with you, Sean. Did you always grow up there in San Diego?
I'm actually from Orange County originally, which is just about an hour away. So yeah, Southern California lad, if you will. Grew up in Costa Mesa, then I went up to school in Santa Barbara, and then I've been living in Encinitas for about 25 years or so.
Very good. And how about you, Brian?
So I was born in San Diego, but when I was really young, my dad ended up getting transferred for work, and we ended up moving over to the desert in the Palm Springs area. So that's where I spent most of my youth and my formative years, and where I got into the tile industry and started working construction right out of high school. So yeah, Palm Springs area is where I generally call home.
Right. In the Palm Springs area, you probably see a lot of really cool tile work, like inside of houses and pools and all that kind of stuff, because they got it going on. That's Sinatra country right there.
Yeah, I didn't do a ton of pool work in those days, but I did work for a small high-end custom home company. So I wasn't like knocking out track work. I was working on these really big, cool custom projects most of the time. So I did get exposed to some very cool designs back in the day. And I graduated high school in '94. So we did occasionally see some glass. One of the last jobs I did before I came to work for Oceanside was a big glass tile shower. So we did see it, but it was more the exception than the rule back then. But yeah, some really cool projects.
Right. So we're really excited to get into this episode and hear kind of the origin story of, Oceanside Glass and Tile, because we've been fans forever. Since one of the first times I think we were visiting a job site, there was a pallet of Oceanside Glass and Tile, and you just opened it, and just the weight and the quality and the look was so much different than anything we had seen before. It was like looking at your favorite stash of baseball cards, like, oh, these ones make me happy. When I flip through these 50 cards, these make me really happy. But anyway, it was kind of that experience, and just always thought that, the brand tiles were just so beautiful, and hearing from friends like the Tributary Revolution guys, and, they went on tour with you guys and saw the factory and stuff like that. And just hearing that story of what goes into this, we just thought that was the coolest thing. So let's get into, the origin story of the company. Can you just tell us how things got started from the very beginning?
Yeah, for sure. So really started with my uncle, Boyce Lundstrom. He, glass blower from the 60s and 70s. And he started a company called Bullseye Glass Company. It was basically three glass blowing artists that were creating a commercial product. They were creating a hand rolled sheet glass that had multiple colors. So stained glass product primarily is how they got started. They eventually got into other things like fusing glass, actually developed, I wouldn't say invented fusing, but kind of re-commercialized the art of fusing glass together, which has really created a whole nother movement in the art glass world. So Boyce called me one day and said, hey, I was 24 at the time. He said, I'm going down to Oceanside, which is about an hour from where I lived, and I'm meeting with a couple buddies, a couple other glass blowers, and we're talking about putting together a small little factory making glass tile. And are you interested in coming down and being part of it? I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. So just a little bit, just a brief background for me. I was working, I graduated a couple of years prior. I was working at an accounting firm, basically visiting clients all the time and doing audits and tax work and things like that. So I'd always, I'd always kind of dreamed about getting into my own business at some point. Didn't know how that was going to happen. So this call was interesting. So I went down, drove down to Oceanside and met with Don, John, and boys. Spent the first hour talking about their surf trip in El Salvador, and then kind of dug into a little bit. My uncle gave me this really super cool fish. It was made out of multiple colors of glass. He said, "We're going to make things like this. It's going to be awesome." So we decided to get together, and I remember the other two guys, Don and John, they were real nice guys and more artists than business people. They looked at me and they kind of looked at Boyce and were like, "What's the kid going to do? He's not a glass blower." So I always kind of had that, I don't know, I wouldn't call it really a chip on my shoulder, but I was always the young new guy to art and felt that I needed to prove myself. So that's how we got started. And we found a 1,000 square foot studio in Oceanside. And it was 2 streets off the water, which was perfect because, when you're melting glass, it's very hot, 2,000, 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, it gets very hot. Plus, my partners all like to surf. So
Right.
they're like, "Hey, inexpensive real estate on the coast of California, 2 streets off the water. We could go jump on the water and go surfing at lunch. And while the glass is cooking, we come back and make some tile in the afternoon." That's kind of how we got rolling there.
I was going to say, what did a day look like back then? Like, I'm just trying to think of all the different excuses you hear, like, oh, like, we can't do this today because, the swell's coming up or whatever's going on.
Yeah, we had a lot of days like that. Early on, I got, it was interesting. So I don't know how much people really know about glass tile or the market and whatnot. So this was in 1992 when we got started. At that time, there was very little commercially available glass tile on the market. We weren't the first ones to make glass tile. In fact, it was, colored glass and glass tiles were even date back to I think 2000 BC, Egyptian times. We won't get into that, but in any case, in the tile market, the glass wasn't really a big thing. So, we had a lot of time on our hands when we got started. So we started with one furnace and could make about 50 square feet. So I remember we used to go to lunch and we go to our favorite little Mexican restaurant called Johnny Manana's. I get a chicken burrito and a Coke for $3.40. I don't know why I remember that, but I do. Anyways, how long was this podcast? 6 hours. Okay, we're good.
Tell us more about this chicken burrito.
Yeah, it was good. It costs like $9 now. I went there like over Christmas. Like, what happened, man? You lost your soul, people.
We'll have to get you a gift card.
Yeah, so we used to have a lot of time on our hands. So we would go to long lunches and whatnot, come back and hope that the fax machine, if you remember what those are, we'd hope the fax machine have a piece of paper on it saying, "You've got an order." And, so the day, really it was myself and Dawn. We were primarily there every day. Boyce would come down from Oregon and spend a couple of weeks there. And then John would come out maybe once or twice a week. And he was, John was the designer. Boyce was kind of the mad scientist, creative, visionary. Don was more the pragmatic. I know how to build furnaces. I know how to develop glass formulas. And then you had me, the new guy, which was more business savvy and trying to figure out how to make this all work. So, a common day would be just getting down there, and I would work in the shop. I would literally cast, cut, grind, pack, answer the phone, do accounting. Accounting back then was like maybe once a month. It was pretty easy. So it was very humble beginnings. It took us about 9 months before we hired our first employee. And, we were basically trying to create and develop a product. And then Boyce was going out and talking to, different distributors, and Sachs, Country Floors, Walker Zanger, companies like that, looking to get some feedback on our product. And most of the people would say, "Hey, this is super cool looking, really beautiful, but glass, is that going to work? Is that going to break? Is it fragile?" So we had to overcome a lot of obstacles early on. Outside of the beauty of it, it was like, great, well, we don't have anything to compare it to. and it wasn't an inexpensive product to make early on. So it was a very much a boutique kind of product that was trying to get introduced into a very staid tile industry. It was tile and stone, and there wasn't a huge amount of small independent makers of products. Like today, if you look at the tile market, there's all kinds of products and all kinds of mediums. So after glass, there was like metal tile, and porcelain is blown up, and wood tile, and all kinds of different things. So we continue to see even what shells, right?
Yeah.
Rare shells and things like that. So back then it was cool because it was like our product really stood out as something different than what everyone else was doing at the time.
Yeah. How did you get the glass back then? What were you using?
Yeah, funny. Well, a couple ways. So my partners had experience with obviously making and melting glass for years and years. And one of the challenges in a small little studio is in order to make glass, you need a lot of components. You need a lot of sand, which is a pretty easy material to get. But you got to get the right type of sand. But you need a lot of space and you need, hazardous material storage and whatnot. You're using earth, kind of rare earth metal oxides to formulate and to get color. So what we did instead was we went to recycled bottles, and we started using recycled bottles pretty much from day one. We also worked with a company called Spectrum Glass. They were a larger sheet glass manufacturer that were making, similar to Bullseye, actually a competitor of Bullseye, making multicolored glasses. So we could buy their industrial waste, their trimmings and scrap. So we could order, and it was great because they had like, 300 colors. So we could order white, reds, blues, oranges, greens, you name it. We could bring those in and then mix that in with other glass forming components to make our batches. So it was a little bit of both. We used some recycled glass, we mixed it with some earth oxides. We used some spectrum color coolant, what we call cullet, which is essentially broken glass. And we were able to make our color palettes from that.
Did you say they used to deliver it to your down a little street or something, you told us?
Yeah, so imagine 1,000 square foot, hut. It was just jammed into a little neighborhood down the coast, and most everyone around us were just residential, neighborhood. But for whatever reason, it was considered a multi-purpose space. So you could do light manufacturing and assembly. So there was an alleyway between our back of our building and the other buildings, and I remember the truck. So when we're getting delivery of recycled bottle, it's not coming in like a little bag. It was literally coming in a dump truck. So the dump truck would have to come in to the alley, maneuver through the overhead wires and electrical, and then somehow lift their tail end of their truck to dump in our yard. So it was always a question of like, hey, did Jimmy move his car? And is the Salvation Army marching band playing today? We had all kinds of crazy neighbors. So it was always an event to go, hey, let's go watch the cullet truck dump their load for us, which would be like 20,000 pounds of glass. And it would take up half of our backyard. Essentially, it would be like having it in your house or a very small house and then having your yard filled with broken Corona bottles and Coke bottles. So it was definitely eventful.
That's pretty cool. I like that story.
I'm sure your neighbors loved you.
Hot exhaust and loud noise of glass breaking and dump trucks. Yeah.
So I know you guys probably had a lot of good times, but was there any times that were pretty difficult that you just kind of had to push through it? Any times specifically that you remember?
Yeah, for sure. We had a lot of success. So early on, it was really humble, and it took us a while to get rolling. I'd say in 96 is when we really started to click in, and we could talk about why or what happened then. But
yeah,
after that point, in 96, we really started like almost every year, like doubling or 50% growth, 80% growth. And we had a really nice trajectory. The market started to go, hey, this is really cool product. People started to understand it better. We started to have more product development that came about. So it really started to become a thing. And no surprise, 2008, in August of 2008, we had our largest month ever. It was huge. We were growing. We were on a pretty good trajectory. And then I remember being in Italy at the trade show called Cersei, and we were down we were down in like some like disco area in this restaurant, just having a good old time. And then I remember my buddy, who was our sales director, was like, yeah, my wife just said the stock market dropped 800 points today. Do you think I should sell some of my stocks? I'm like, what? What's going on? And that was kind of my first light bulb going on of like something's going on here. And then the economy just fell apart into 2008. So for us, that was really challenging. We were a little bit of a Midas touch kind of company. We felt like we could pretty much do anything and it would turn to gold. And it was a great awakening for me as a businessman. It was probably the start of my real career as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a leader. Because until you faced your first layoff or your first challenging business environment, you really haven't run a business yet. So that was kind of a really tough time.
Yeah, that had to be super difficult. What happened? What did you guys have to do exactly?
Well, it was only a couple of months after that, early 2009, we were selling to a company called Expo Design Center. I don't know if you remember them, but they were owned by Home Depot. They had about 50 to 60 showrooms, and they were not quite 10% of our business, but they were significant.
Yeah, good chunk.
Home Depot just took the eraser out and said, nope, we're not doing that anymore. Shut that down. So in addition to the normal, like the not normal, but down the downgrade of the market and all the things that we were noticing and the reduced sales, that came and hit us as well. So just dealing with things, and then you think you have it figured out. You're like, okay, we had to cut staff, we had to do furloughs, we had to get really creative and work with the team and just be honest with everybody and say, hey, we all got to pitch in and make it through here. And then another domino would fall and hit. Eventually, it took us a while. Eventually we kind of normalized and got to kind of a steady state. And flat was the new up for us for a while, for a few years. But that was a stressful time. It was definitely a stressful time for us.
Yeah. And did any new products come out of that? Maybe where you were looking at different markets. I mean, how long before from when you started in 92, how long before you even got into swimming pools?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And in fact, well, not to say that we didn't sell some of our product into pools prior to this, but the real big event that happened was we got connected with Hearst Castle up in San Simeon, California. So, William Randolph Hearst, the newspaper magazine baron of the 1900s, had this castle, or he has a castle. I mean, he's long since passed, but it's now a California historic monument. So it's a massive, massive facility, and they have an indoor, what they call their indoor Roman monument pool. Well, it was built back in the 20s. The entire pool and all the walls are filled with multiple shades of cobalt glass mosaic, a little 1x1, rough edged, very matte finish looking product, as well as gold leaf in there. And so that what they needed to do is they needed to do repairs on the castle. I mean, you can imagine a pool and surrounding environment being built 90 years prior. They needed some help with getting things, actually 80 years prior, 70 years prior, back in the 90s. They needed a lot of repair work to be done. So we ended up developing a product to kind of mimic or replicate what was made way back in the 20s. And might sound easier than it really was. The challenge for us was that the product was so different than a real glossy, normal glass consistency. It was almost a hybrid of a porcelain tile and glass. Yeah, sounds like a bad joke. If a porcelain tile and a glass tile rocked into a bar, and what would happen? That's what it was. I had a weird baby. So
why did they use glass then?
Yeah, great question. Well, one, it was made in Italy, and Italy is kind of known to be one of the capitals of glass in the world, right? So long history of the Venetian glass and Byzantine glass. So it's an amazing history. I don't know if the product just, somehow it could have been chemically etched over time, or if it was just the process at that time, the way they produce it. Some of the glass you see from Italy has a lot of grain to it, and it has a lot of bubbles and other things going on with it. I know that the way that they melt glass, it's done in a kind of a continuous furnace format. The product just ends up looking a bit different. So if you looked at a product like Bazaza today, I'd say it probably looked a little more like Bazaza than it does look like our product.
Yeah.
So we don't have any visuals here to show you, but it just has a little bit different of a more granular kind of surface to it. So why would they use glass? I mean, glass is it's a great medium for pools. I mean, if you don't know, I mean, you guys obviously know, but glass is, as close as you can get to impervious. It's considered impervious. It's less than 0.5% of water absorption. So that's really important. Obviously, when you're in wet applications, that you're not getting water inside the body of the tile and then having freeze thaw issues. So glass is perfect for that, assuming that it's been annealed and cured and taken, made in the appropriate way. So, and plus, I think with the color, with glass, you can melt through body, full color product. It's you don't have to worry about surface of it chipping and having a different color underneath. I think it's a perfect product for pools.
Yeah, well, and I think in the context of the Hearst Castle, right, you look around there, nothing's normal, right?
Mhm.
Everything is high end, different, imported, right? Gold leaf. So I think they were looking for something that was more cutting edge on the design front, right? They wanted something different for that whole place is plastered in the best of everything. So
Yeah.
Right.
I would imagine that design kind of factored into it, whether or not it looked like a glossy glass. It was part of the story of, hey, this is an imported, glass product that nobody else has.
And I would be terrified to touch that. I mean, just something being, 80, 90 years old, going in there, it's like, man, you go in there with a jackhammer, that whole castle might fall down. I'm sure there's been a
Yeah.
lot of renovations and stuff like that since it's been
Yeah, and
around.
I wasn't there. I wasn't part of that, but part of the story I heard is that one of the reasons they had to do the repairs is they decided to switch the pool over to salt water,
Mm-hmm.
and they flooded it with ocean water, and they had old iron pipes in there that just instantly rusted out, and they had to basically go in and jackhammer out and take out a bunch of iron pipes. And so take it for what it's worth. I heard it secondhand. I don't know the provenance of that story, but that's what I was told. So
I think that's right, because I've been there twice to the castle. Actually, the second time I went there, the outdoor pool was being renovated, so the whole thing was empty and they were working on it. But the indoor pool, yeah, I think that's correct. They switched it to salt and it messed up a bunch of stuff.
yeah,
That pool
nobody
is-
asked, hey, is this going to hurt the pipes?
Right. That pool
Oops.
is amazing. Yeah,
Do you have to pay to go see that?
it's like a historical monument now, so you have to
Right.
Yeah,
take a
I think it's run by
take
the
like a
state.
long
Yeah.
30-minute ride up to the castle in this like little
So that's why they
It's
keep
pretty
doing the
cool.
repairs to it, because it's a
Yeah.
destination spot.
Yeah.
but they redid the
True.
whole entire outdoor pool when I was there last time. It was like all jackhammered up and stuff, and you could, I believe they were allowing you to rent it once it was completed. You could rent the outdoor pool now for like, I think it's like $5,000 for 2 hours or something.
Oh snap! Pool chaser mixer.
that's,
Coming
what
at
I,
ya.
that's what I heard, that they were going to allow people to rent it out as like a party destination.
That's pretty
Yeah,
sweet.
that's a life goal right there. Cannonball into the Hearst pool.
Right.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, William Randolph Hearst, I mean, I haven't really studied him, but from what I know, he was quite the party man. He
Uh-huh.
connected a lot with the Hollywood crowd, so he'd come up and have lavish parties there. He also hung out in a place called the Willows in Palm Springs. I don't know if you know where that is.
Yep,
but
I do.
pretty cool, small little hotel there. Yeah, no, the funny thing is Hearst Castle, they reached out again this summer, so we're in connection and communication with them about doing yet another renovation on the pool.
Yeah,
so we'll see
we
how
made
that
them.
goes.
Well, I wasn't with the company at the time, but you made them 20 years worth of product,
Yeah.
and it's now been 20 years, so
Yeah.
they need more.
We tried to make enough for them so they wouldn't have to do it again. Yeah, it was a challenging project for us. Now we have all the formulas and whatnot, but it's definitely, like I said, a different type of glass. So
But that pretty much then put you guys on the map from there.
it did. It was kind of it catapulted us, because we're like, oh, hey, let's take this mold that we just made for this Hearst Castle project and let's put our 7 colors that we make and let's see what it looks like. And we started to make, just some samples of whatnot. I brought one board to the trade show. It's called Coverings, which is in Florida, usually annually. This year we missed it, but because of COVID. But anyway, we brought one board there, and like all the customers were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Can you guys produce this product? So we sent a couple samples out to different customers. As we were doing that, one of our customers showed it to It's this guy that, or is it a band called CNC Music Factory. So
Mm-hmm.
they're a 90s group. They had some pretty catchy tunes. You can maybe play it in the background because I'm not going to hum the bar for you. But it was kind of cool though. Like, yeah, CNC Music Factory, that's sweet. So they bought like a couple 100 feet. So we got the order. We're like, we actually don't even know how to like put this on mesh. So I called 3M, the sticky company, the tape company, called 3M, and we started just doing R&D work with them. They kept sending me samples of square foot paper and rolls that had a self-adhesive on the back of it that you could kind of activate just by putting water over it. So eventually we figured it out. We experimented with plastic, experimented with paper, and we got that shipment out. And then we probably signed up 150 to 200 dealers across the country, and that was our primary product. And that's really when things started to grow. I would say that was in like 96, 95, 96.
Yeah, what's cool, that was the birth of our Tessera series, which is our 1x1 and 1x2, but it's a hand broken, scored, and snapped, very irregular shape and edge. That series is still alive today. It still exists. It was our best seller for how many years? I mean, 18, 20 years. That was our top selling product line. And those molds, which we have since refined and figured out better ways to make, but the basic idea of that product line was born out of that Hearst Castle project, which I think is really cool, right? Mm-hmm. I wasn't around for that, but knowing the provenance and the history of it, it's such a cool thing to one project where somebody's like, hey, can you figure this out? And it really did lead to this kind of birth of a larger product line and then future R&D on other products. And it really was the foundation of this company. So I think it's cool.
It was important too, because at that time we were selling a product line with Walker Zanger. That was our first big customer. Line was called Oceana, and it was 3 colors, later added to about, I think, 6 or so. And it was 3x3s and 6x6s. We had a couple of decorative liners. We later created a pool series of 6x6 dolphins and waves and things like that. But that was our primary customer. And so when we started making the mosaic, and as Brian said, it's rustic edge. We call it the classic look. It's our classic Coke. Muse is our new Coke. And we brought it to Walker Zanger and said, hey guys, do you guys, want to get on board with this and stock it, whatnot? And I remember being in the product development meeting with their team, and they said, it's cool, but we're really concerned about the rough edge. We're just not sure if it's really going to work. We don't, maybe we'll sell it like special order, whatnot. So that's what really gave us the impetus to start selling that product line directly to dealers across the country. So instead of going through a master distributor, we started to create our own distribution channel. That was really important in the history of our business because it gave us more diversity. It opened more doors for us, helped us with just being able to make a more sufficient margin on there, not having that extra layer of stocking distribution in the middle there. So in addition to the artistic side of it, from a business standpoint, it was probably one of the greatest things that happened to the business.
See, I didn't know that part of the story. And I think that's really cool that one of the things that drove you to move the company beyond was a no, right? Like getting a no from a customer was one of the best things that ever happened for the company.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We want to thank Pentair for supporting the show. As a podcast for pool professionals, we know that when you sell products, it's your reputation on the line. And when they are Pentair products, it's theirs as well. That's why Pentair's got your back with their trade grade program, which supports your business and reputation by offering exclusive tools and support for lead generation, attractive product rebates and longer warranties, and an unmatched expertise when it comes to accurate equipment selection, setup, and service. So to learn more about how trade grade protects, empowers, and helps your business grow, visit pentair.com/trade grade. That's pentair.com/trade grade, or click the link below.
So I'd love to know, what were some of the creative ideas that were kind of just thought of in being by the water and being in the surf? And I feel like you could just go put your toes in the sand and look at the water, and all these different emotions kind of come out of you and you start thinking differently. But I'm so curious as to what some of those ideas look like when maybe the guys were out surfing and they came back and they just had like an idea about something, what were some of those original kind of ideas and thoughts that you'd hear you thought of yourself back in the day?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, outside of boys, Don and John, and then later Johnny joined the group and became a partner. And like right around the time of Tessera being launched, all of us, the four of us, all grew up on the coast. I mean, I think we all lived within 2 miles of the coast, 2, 3 miles of the coast our whole life. So we all had a long history of just being Southern California kids and being in the water and being at the beach. That was kind of a normal course for us. And with John was more the eccentric artist. So he's a happy-go-lucky guy, taught glass and ceramics at Cal State Fullerton. So early on, he was our main designer. Some of the products he would come up with, he would literally come down and play with clay. He would just start carving stuff in clay and try to come up with prototypes. So we made, all, fish and individual fish and fish on 6x6s and surf tiles and mermaids and surfer girls and
sea
pretty
turtles,
much everything like
starfish.
that.
Yeah.
What was that?
Starfish and sea turtles.
Starfish and everything. I mean, it was all the design elements were really kind of Southern California based, kind of Southern California culture. And on the color side, a lot of the colors, like just our iridescence, we really refined which is the coating that we put on the glass. It gives it kind of that sometimes bronze look, or maybe a pewter bronze, or even a rainbow type finish to it. Down at the beach, and you see the tide kind of going in and out, you'll notice, especially in the late afternoon, there is almost like an iridescent glow in the sand. It's very reflective, and it looks very much like the glass. And so, it's hard to say, were we intentional about it? Or are we influenced by it? We're probably influenced, and we refined our iridescent techniques to kind of mimic things that we were seeing in nature. And designs, as as Johnny came in, he started doing more on the design side, just reflected more of the places we had been to visit, places that we lived at, where we lived or had spent time. And it was more organic and just more natural. And that's kind of how we got into design. And, later we started to seek what was going on in the market and asking customers, but we've always kind of maintained our own identity. And we're probably always just slightly different than other companies that are out there.
Right. I think you guys nailed it, because it's funny. Before reaching out to you guys, we were kind of thinking about what your history might have looked like. And we were just kind of throwing it out there and was like, I wonder if they were just kind of sitting out on their surfboard and just looking out at the water. And because of the reflection and all these different things, that was like what sparked an idea of, just their tiles. And you talking about the iridescent tiles, I think it does look like that, because I've seen those in person, and depending on where the sun is in the day or what angle you're looking at it, it's the same as the ocean. Depending on where you're at or what time of day it is, things switch up and looks a little bit different. So that's really cool. It's a good story.
Well, what's cool about that too is our focus on pools is with the light. There's lights at different angles at any time during the day. So you have where the sun's at and how it's reflecting on the tile. It can be where the tile is on the pool. You might have one area where you're not seeing any of the iridescent. Other area might be completely almost blinding iridescence, right? Like glowing. The thing that's really neat about that is it's always changing. So at any given time of the day, your pool, the look of your pool is going to look different. And that really, is reflective of what's going on in nature and how the sun works with the ocean and the sand. We also made a lot of tiles, just like we have ones called sand dunes and things like that, where it's just that natural flow of sand or water or material kind of shows up in some of the design work that we do. And in fact, we even did, what's the name of that one where we do kind of it's probably called the wave. It's a mosaic, but we literally, instead of doing a grid-like mosaic, we actually have it in a wave. So we actually curve it and move it in a wave-like format with mosaics. Pretty sweet.
Very cool. Very cool. So we'd love to hear more about the culture of Oceanside Glass and Tile. Maybe you could just tell us kind of the progression of the culture, and, some things stay the same, and obviously as you grow, things have to change a bit.
For sure. You want me to give that a whirl?
Yeah, well, you start with
It's
the
always
culture.
interesting. So
You start with the culture of the early days, and I'll speak to the later years.
yeah, Brian's been here a good long time too. So
Yeah.
yeah, culture is an interesting thing, So when we started the business, obviously myself and three glass blowers, we had kind of a naturally casual kind of demeanor. And I'm obviously mostly being Southern California, there's a certain vibe about how we just go about day to day. When I was working in the accounting world, I was literally visiting customers every month. And one of the things that I really just happened to note when I was working outside of just what the business was like was, what is the environment like? What's it like to go work at this business versus that business? And I had distinct memories of one company in particular called Woodcrest Development. I don't think they're around anymore. They were the fourth largest home builder in California at the time. So very successful, great product. They were a well-run machine, but what was super cool about it was when I went there, we were in this observatory for a racquetball court. They had 2 indoor racquetball courts. They had a warehouse that they didn't really need because of a real estate company. And they put a wood floor and basketball hoop in there. At one point they had a hot tub, but I think they had a couple bad moments there, so that got pulled out. But and back in that, unfortunately, I didn't get to witness that. But
I was gonna say, what happened exactly?
I don't know. But
The 80s in a hot
that's the
tub
place
are
where the hot tub
bad
was.
combination.
Okay.
Damn, day one.
Yeah, but they were so cool. It was such a great environment. The thing that was nice about it was, what I really respected was, here's a company that's performing very well in their market. From an accounting perspective, they were tight and they had a lot of fun. They were, back then, you might laugh at this now, but they were casual. So every day they were wearing casual clothing, professional but casual. Back then we were wearing suits to every client every day. Back in the 90s, things were a little more uptight. And so I just, I kind of took it to heart. And I said, hey, when I got the opportunity to work and to develop my own company, I'm like, look, I'm going to put my rules in, and my rules are going to be fun. I want to create a culture where we spend time together, working hard and making sure we focus on results, but also have really fun time doing it, listening to music, going out at lunchtime and playing basketball or going surfing, whatever it was. I've always tried to make work an enjoyable place and give people the freedom to really just do their job, instead of saying you got to be here at 8 a.m. and you take a 10-minute break and a 1-hour lunch. It's like, do what you need to do, get your job done. If you're more relaxed because you went out and played soccer at lunch, great, do it. I'm all for it. So there you go. There's my kind of intro to culture. Right. Brian could give you his perspective, since I need to leave the room if you want to talk differently.
No. Well, it's being recorded, so that won't actually do me any good.
I'll get you later.
So, all right. So to give you my background, I was doing construction and I was a tile installer, and I've been doing it straight out of high school. My older brother's a tile contractor, still is. And I started going out and helping him on jobs when I was still in high school, like weekends and summers and stuff. And then, so it was an easy transition for me. I just rolled right into that. Right out of high school, I was basically taking classes at community college at night and working tile. And at that time, part of the attraction for me to the construction world was I could show up in ratty shorts and busted shoes. And as long as I did my work, nobody cared. I could, I think I told you guys before, as long as you showed up to work mostly sober, you were okay, right? Like, and if you were too hungover, they'd make you drink a beer so you could actually function. So, I was very much attracted to that idea of like, I can do whatever I want. I don't have to look a certain way. I had long ratty hair. Well, I kind of do now too, but
you have COVID head.
I have, yeah, I need a COVID cut, but it was that's what I really liked. That I didn't like the idea of sitting in an office all day and being with stuffy people. I worked with people who told dirty jokes and cussed all the time, and that was just what I was used to. So, and then I totally annihilated my back. Like the week before I turned 30, I got an MRI. And I had I was working for somebody else at the time, but I had like a 5-year plan. I had a 2-year-old daughter and I was married, and I was like, all right, in 5 years, I'm going to get my license. I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to do my own thing. Right. So I had this whole plan, this grand idea of I was going to, build a big tile company and be successful. And then they're like, well, dude, you can't do this anymore. Like your back is destroyed. And I wasn't at a place where I could just go hire people and have other people do the work. Right. So I had to find a new line of work. And I was terrified. I was terrified I was going to end up in an office somewhere and Well, yeah, I did. But so through some previous connections of people I worked with in the desert, there was a contractor who I worked with out there who was working at Oceanside at the time. And uh, just through the grapevine, I heard they were looking for somebody. So I threw my hat in the ring, came out, interviewed with the company, and I walked in the door and they're taking me around on the tour. And I also did mention I was a musician. I played drums, and my brother's a musician, and everybody, all of our friends were musicians. So we're all constantly playing and recording. And as they're taking me through on the tour of the facility, they're like, "Yeah, that's the band recording room." And I was like, "What?" Wait, there's a band room? And I poked my head in the door, and there's like recording equipment and a drum set and guitars leaning against the wall. And I'm like, all right, cool. And then we went upstairs, and I met Johnny, who Sean mentioned as one of the partners. He was more active at the time, but and Johnny was just this really laid back guy who was really cool. Um, I think on the picture on his door at the time was like a picture of him like sticking his tongue out and giving the horns while he's playing his bass guitar. Like that's what you saw walking into his office.
Nice.
So I was like, all right, I think I might be able to hang here. Like this is pretty cool. And it was a loose environment, but at the same time, everybody took their job very seriously. Everybody worked really hard. Like when it was time to step up, put in the extra effort, right? We had the deadline or the big job we were trying to land. Everybody just got their stuff done. And then at the same time, at 3 o'clock on Friday, beers were getting cracked and people were playing shuffleboard and having a good time. So, and I think I mentioned to you guys before, like one of the things I loved about it was a group of people who really genuinely like each other, right? And it still is. Like in a lot of places you work, there's a separation between your work friends, people you're friendly with at work, and then your real friends. And so it's like, you're not necessarily hanging out with your work friends on the weekend or texting them or having conversations with them. Where here, it's very different from that. There were people I worked with who don't even work here anymore, who I'm still best friends with. Like we're constantly in connection, and it really was a deep connection with people, and that environment that made it feel like you could be yourself at work and make friends. So that's what I really enjoyed about the culture and still do. And there was monthly we'd have these big team OGTs, right? We're a much smaller company now after the recession, and over the years our US employee group has shrunk, so it's not quite as feasible to do some of the things we used to do. But we used to have these team OGT potlucks once a month, where literally the whole company was shut down in the middle of the day, and the whole place would empty out into the parking lot, and we would either do a potluck or it would be catered. There would be music. We'd get the company updates like, hey, here's what's going on. There'd be some awards for people, right? Employee of the month, whatever. But it was like a 2 hour long affair in the middle of the workday to just be like, hey, we're going to hang out and feed you and give you an update of what's going on with the company. And it was always fun. And I don't, there's not a lot of places you can work in a corporate environment where it feels like that. So
Dude,
that's my 2 cents.
That's an awesome story, because I'm sure that just energizes everybody to want to work that much harder, because it's like, man, I want to stay here. Like I don't ever want to go anywhere else. You know what I mean?
It is, and I can tell you, and I've said it before. I've got some guys that work for me now out in the warehouse, right? And there are times where it's like, hey, we need to dig in and get these orders out the door because it's important. Or, this Friday, they get here early. They were here until 7 o'clock on Friday because the truck was late, right? But they're not doing it for the paycheck. They're not like, oh, cool, I get some overtime. Like they're doing it for each other, and they're doing it for us because they know it's important for the company. And they'll say it, like even we would never do this because it would be totally illegal. But even if I told them, hey, clock out, you need to stay, they would stay. Because like I said, they're not doing it for the couple extra bucks they're getting on the clock. They're doing it for each other, and they're doing it for the company because they really feel a kinship and a connection to the company, which is awesome. It's
Those
like,
guys in the warehouse, Brian,
I mean,
Tony's been, how many years has he worked with us?
going on 14, and
Yeah,
Jose is the same.
Pablo's done 2 tours. So he worked with us for a while. Then we opened up in Mexico, and then he came back later. And then and Jose's been here forever too.
Yeah, and Antonio Sofia in the sample department have been here for over 20 years. I mean, it's just, I mean, we've all worked together for so long. I just got past my 14-year anniversary in July. So, I mean, I've worked with all these guys for over a decade. They've watched my kids grow up. They've, it's family at this point after this amount of time, and the the good times, the bad times, being in the trenches together. That there's a little bit of that feeling as well.
Right. That's cool. You've even seen some were probably a little bit quicker on the basketball court than they are now.
Well, Tony,
Like,
Tony
man, I
used to
remember
be
back in the
really
day, you
fast,
were
but then
dunking
he
on
had to
me.
have a couple ACL surgeries.
Yeah, I twitched too fast on the right. He couldn't keep up.
Well, there was the time you got your nose broken on the
I did,
on
yeah.
the basketball court.
Oh
Really?
my gosh, that's
Woo.
yeah.
He caught an elbow.
I was trailing a play. I was trailing.
That guy doesn't work here anymore.
And somebody grabbed the ball and pulled, and then the guy's wrist, like, it triggered back, and then the bone on his wrist literally hit me point blank on the nose, broke it in 2 spots.
Oh.
That was just like instant blood everywhere.
Can you imagine breaking the boss's nose while you're at work?
Well, it was cool because I knew Vinny was kind of.
That's it.
Vincent French, by the way, he's the one that broke my nose, just in case anyone's listening. So Vinny was kind of stressed out about it. So I remember a couple of days later, I kind of staged a little bit of a coup. So I'm like, hey, come over in the lunchroom with me and we'll kind of talk a little loud so Vinny can hear us over there. So I started talking about this story, like, yeah, the doctor said I've got to have reconstructive surgery. It's probably gonna cost like $50,000. I may not be able to breathe right afterwards, and I'll probably look different. And so I went through this whole thing, and then he kind of walks over. He's like, "Dude, are you okay?" I'm like, "Oh man, I'm just happy. I'm fine."
Oh, that's awesome.
It's good.
I'm never gonna look the same, man.
Yeah. Well, and see, that kind of goes to the culture, right? It's like having fun and messing with each other. We, at one point, I think Sean had a bet with production that they couldn't get a certain amount out in a certain time. So there was a work day where he had to wear a dress to work all day.
That was
man.
August 2008.
Was it? Was that was like our peak month?
That was the first time I wore a dress. Yeah, no, I don't know why I did that. I think at one point I offered to go wear a bikini and rollerblades and go skate down by the boardwalk, but that never came true, thank God. So
Whew.
Saved a lot of people a lot of heartache.
That's rough.
Yeah, I'll do that occasionally.
That's cool.
Put some crazy goals.
Throw down a challenge for production.
Yeah,
you can't ship that much this month.
Yeah. Don't do the tattoo on your ass like in The Office. You guys ever watch The Office?
Yeah, I don't do that.
Yes.
He's like, nobody's ever worked that hard before, but he's like, oh, I'll even put a tattoo on my ass. And everyone just goes crazy. And he's like, I've worked here for so long, and this is usually Stanley's like nap time. And he's just like selling left and right. And they're like, dude, what is going on?
That sounds like a little bit like Impractical Jokers. They do some pretty extreme things. I think one guy had to get like a tattoo of Jaden Smith on his thigh.
Yeah,
those guys are insane.
That doesn't go away, right? That's that's there.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I'm embarrassed for those guys. I'm like, oh my God, I can't watch this. Nice.
Yeah, that sounds like cool, fun environment, guys. Thanks for sharing all that. Well, it's time for PoolRx's end of summer sale again. That means it's time for you to replenish your inventory and purchase those boosters. When we were running Brother, the PoolRx sales were always one of our favorite times of the year. We got a discount on the product, but more importantly, we were setting up our pools for success while reducing chemical usage, which saved us a ton of time and money. Let me tell you more about the product. PoolRx eliminates and prevents all types of algae, reduces chlorine demand, and lasts up to 6 months. This is where the boosters come in handy. If you purchase units in the spring, you can add a booster to those out in the field, and they can last another 6 months. With PoolRx, there is no need for phosphate removers, clarifiers, or other algicides. While using PoolRx, you will see high-definition water clarity. I mean, these pools just really pop. Right now, you can get $15 off a 4-pack of blue units, $17.50 off a 4-pack of black units, and $7.50 off a 4-pack of boosters at your favorite distribution location. The sale ends September 30th, so get them while you can. If you want to find out more about the product and how we used PoolRx for our company, please check out episode 8 of the podcast, and you can also visit poolrx.com by clicking the link below. So let's talk about the kind of manufacturing process and what goes into making such a quality product.
Well, it really starts with the materials. So we use very specific, refined products. We make sure that everything's tested, that if we're ever going to introduce a new chemical, that we do full testing on it. We have very disciplined storage routines. And in fact, some of our chemicals require military permits just because some of the products that we bring in could be used for other purposes that could have national concerns at heart. So we're good. We follow the rules. Yeah, we're disciplined about our material selection and storage. And then really where it comes down to, probably the biggest difference maker is the way that we melt our glass. The way we mix it and we melt it is very thorough. So it typically takes about 12 to 14 hours to turn around a batch. So we'll start like with the sand or the recycled bottle. We'll mix it. We'll then slowly introduce it into the furnace. We'll make sure it gets integrated with the glass, and as it's melting, we continue to stir it and move it. So by the time that we're ready to cast, what we call casting glass or scooping and pressing glass, it is of a quality where it looks like a lake, essentially like an orange lake. But if you picked up the glass, it would be free of debris. It won't have lots of unmelted particles and things like that. So we were talking about the Hearst Castle project, some of that other texture and whatnot you see in that is like unmelted glass particulate that because they're melting it so quickly, it just kind of becomes part of the thing. We refine the glass in a way that removes the seeds and the bubbles and the additional, make sure everything's melted really well. Then from there, every single tile is hand cast. So we have these large metal scoops, we call them ladles, like a soup ladle, and they'll have different sizes depending on the type of pressing we're going to make. We'll individually scoop and bring it over to a press table, and that press table will have a mold in it or a die, right? So you want your mosaic 1x1s, or if you want a decorative liner, we'll have a die that has multiple images of that or embossed images in that die or mold. And then we press the glass right onto, we press the mold right onto the glass. And then from there, it's moved over to another area where we reheat the glass so it gets hot and it's consistent throughout the body and the surface. And then we'll put an iridescent coating if that's what the order is for. And then from there, it goes in a large oven. We call it a leer or an annealing oven. It's literally 60, 80 foot long belt leer. It takes anywhere from 2 hours to 4 to 6 hours to run, depending on the thickness of the glass. That final step is probably the biggest differentiator you'll see from our product to other products that are coming from overseas. And that annealing process is essentially taking the stress of the glass out. So if you just literally scooped a piece of glass and let it cool on a table, what ends up happening is the outside, you take a 2000 degree piece of glass, the outside, if it's 80 degrees outside, it's essentially contextually freezing. So you have this tension and this cooling that's happening on the outside, but the inside of the glass is surrounded by the other part of the glass, right? So it's staying very hot and it's not getting cold. What ends up happening is the outside, as it cools, you start to get a formation of glass where it freezes. Glass is essentially a frozen liquid. And once that process happens, it becomes rigid. Well, if the glass on the inside is still hot and gooey and molten, as it finally cools, it shrinks too. So glass, when it goes from a hot molten state to a frozen state, it shrinks. Just like anything, you have expansion in heat, contraction and reduction of heat. And so when that happens, you have a stress factor of the inside of the glass is literally pulling itself in, but you have a frozen outside, which causes tension. So the glass now is under tension. And that tension often is referred to as a stress, like annealing stress. And you can actually see it. There are ways that you can look at under a polarized lens, a filtered polarized lens with a light source. You can detect if the glass has any inherent stress in it. So long story short, it's a kind of our entire operating production process is all built around not making the glass super fast or as inexpensive as we can, We don't cut corners. We try to make it, our first job is to make it a very high quality product because, what are people doing with the glass? They're putting it in there. How often do you redo your kitchen? How often do you redo your pool? Hopefully not too often, right? So we want to have our customers avoid the situation where they're putting in a really expensive and really beautiful product and have it crack 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, right? We want something that the only reason they'd be taking it out is because they're getting the new, latest, greatest Oceanside Glass Tile product 20 years from now, which is what I'm going to be doing in my house pretty soon.
Well, and
I got to change some of my trends, but yeah, so that's kind of the quality in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I can expand on a little of that in terms of the technical side. So, when Sean was talking about refining and mixing in the furnaces, right? The reason that's really important is as you're mixing the glass, if you get a little piece of glass or an area within the molten glass that isn't the exact same composition of everything else around it, when you scoop that and you put that into a tile, you can have a little strip of a different composition of glass going through your tile. Now, you may not be able to see it. It may not be a different color, may not be, there may be no visual issues with it whatsoever. But if it's not the same coefficient of expansion, right, COE, when that thing goes through any sort of heating and cooling cycles, like tile does in pools, right? They heat up in the sun, they cool off when the overflow kicks on. They'll expand and contract at different rates. If it's a big enough difference, they'll actually expand and contract enough. They'll just separate from one another, and that tile will just start to crack, and it'll just spontaneously fail. And that can be from less than ideal manufacturing practices where you're not fully refining and mixing the product. No way to see that unless you're looking at it. If you do look at it through a polariscope, like Sean said, you can see that show up as streaks of light that go through there. But nobody's doing that inspection on the job site level, right? And then at the casting level, where he's talking about scooping it out and putting it onto the presses, we have all of our presses are made in-house. We would call them super presses. And the molds we have are very, very complicated, and they have cooling systems built in. If you let your molds get too hot, the glass starts to stick. If you run your molds too cold, you cool the glass too fast, and then as you're trying to form it, it's freezing, and then you're still pressing on it, you start to get cracks. That's called thermal checking. And if you look at some of the lower end products, you'll actually see these little cracks and fissures in the surface. That's usually what it's from, is the molds are running too cold. So we have these molds or presses that cost a ton of money to build all of them, but they're run with very, very controlled water-cooled molds, both top and bottom. So we can get them up to temperature and keep them right in that range where we need to be. And then as you go on, like he said, he goes into the leer, alleviates that stress that you get from that casting process. It's impossible to cast a glass into that shape and not get stress because you freeze the outside of it first. You still have the chewy center. As that starts to freeze, it pulls in on the outside. Well, and the reason that's a problem is the way I explain it to people is imagine a piece of rope and you have it stretched on two posts, right? And you put, 5,000 pounds of tension on that rope. If you just touch it with a knife, it's going to explode, right? Take that same rope, take all the force off of it and just have it a little bit drooped. Now you're going to have to sit there and hold it and saw through it with a knife in order to get it to fail. It's the same idea with a tile. If you have a tile that has a bunch of stress in it, you put it into a demanding environment like a pool overflow, spillway, it takes a lot less stress, exterior force to cause that tile to fail than one that's been properly annealed, properly cast, properly mixed. All of those things build layer after layer after layer of quality that make a performing tile in a pool. So that's the longer version of the technical side of why it matters so much, particularly when we're talking about pools.
Yeah, well said from both of you. And is a lot of this stuff being done by hand, or, you guys have automation set up, or is a lot of this like being done by the people just kind of moving things around and shaping this stuff?
Well, I think we have the equipment and the setup and the process developed for them to succeed. And then it goes back to training. So we actually have a training program where we're bringing people fresh in, maybe have never been exposed to glass before, where we'll put them through both training and physical training, as well as like some educational training and testing. As new employees kind of enter into the workforce, they'll start out at what we call just a basic level. They might be there for 30, 60, 90 days. Then they can test out and get into the next level. And part of that testing would be basic understanding of glass, and part of it's basic acuity. Like, can you scoop the glass effectively? Are you pressing it timely? Are you moving around the tools and the equipment? Are you demonstrating a level that would be maybe higher than someone that's just starting out? So we literally, our goal is to try to move people into what we call an expert level, which might take 6 months. And then we do our best to try to hang on to those guys by one, giving them different opportunities for higher pay and bonuses and a number of different things that make it a great place to work in terms of that. There is hand care and there's a lot of inspection to answer your question, on the quality assurance. So we have the process set up, we're training the people, and then we have at the end of the line, it's like, okay, let's do visual inspection. Is there thermal checking? Do we have an issue with a run? Do we need to do polariscope testing on that? Those kinds of tests are happening all the time. Then there's other things like dimensional tolerance. Is the product too thick? Is it too thin? Is it square? Is it warped? I mean, we have probably 20 different checks. Is there too many bubbles? Although bubbles and wrinkles and things like that are kind of a normal part of our process, we still have standards around that. We do a lot of Six Sigma engineering type work. So we're testing samples every X amount of presses to make sure that it's still the same thickness, things like that. We have the guys that are pressing and casting, go to the other side of the layer and actually cut. It's kind of like eat your own food that you're preparing. Like, okay, you go cut your glass, tell me if it's good or not, right? So we have a lot of different ways that we go about making sure that we're monitoring and checking the quality of the product.
It is a lot. There is a lot of hands-on, for sure. So the basic overview of the process is you have your furnace, right? You have the opening in the furnace. It's called the glory hole. Nobody chuckle. You stick the ladle in, scoop up the glass. Depending on what you're molding, the ladle size is anywhere from like 2 to 4 or 5 pounds of glass at a time. That goes into the platen or the bottom mold. They close the protective shield on the press. That automatically presses it, and the reason that's automatic is it gives us very tight controls over thickness. It's all computer controlled, and the press will increase pressure to whatever it needs to get to the right thickness. So a second or two delay between the furnace opening and the mold can change the temperature of the glass to where it may take more pressure to press it because it's cooled down a little bit more, right? So once it comes off there, they grab it with a pizza peel, which is just a big flat metal thing. It goes into the iridizer, gets reheated, gets sprayed with iridizing, which is a metallic oxide, gets fused into the surface. Then it goes onto the Lear belt. The Lear belt, so now you're talking about a patty that's usually about this big of pieces or mosaics that are still connected to one another. A couple hours later, it comes out of the end of the Lear where now it's cooled down. So it gets reheated, slowly cooled down over about 2 hours. And that's really what takes that stress out from the casting, is we heat it back up and then slowly cool it down. So it cools down evenly throughout the piece, right? So you're getting rid of that effect of the outside cooling faster than the inside. And then when it comes out of the other side, you have now a patty that gets hand scored and broken. So that literally goes onto somebody's workbench. They have a carbide cutting tool. They score each piece and then break it apart. And then that goes into a bin. That bin gets moved along into production, and then that goes into the mosaic sheeting area where, depending on the order, you can have, it looks a little bit like a production line where you have trays going down a line, and each person is responsible for either putting in a certain number of pieces or a certain color. So if it's a color blend, then they're all, and it's just working its way all the way down, and everybody's doing their own kind of visual QC as they go and putting that mosaic together. So I mean, I think one of the people we used to work with went through and counted how many people touch a sheet of tile or touch a component that goes on a sheet of tile before it makes it in the box. And it was 14 or 15 people were involved with putting that one sheet together. So it is a very hands-on, handmade process for sure.
That's cool. Yeah. And that's what I was getting at, because I think there's a lot of, products being made at such a high volume that, it doesn't ever get touched. It's just, it's just being done in such a big volume that, it's completely different than what you guys do, where you're constantly looking at it. And, if anything does happen during that quality check, you can notice it and either toss it out, redo it, whatever you need to do in that process.
Well, and a huge amount of our products are made to order, right? We do have big stocking customers who stock certain blends or certain colors, but a large percentage of our business is still made to order, right? So you order your 40 sheets of glass for your water line or for your backsplash, and we're making that for you, right? So there's a guy casting your glass, there's a guy hand cutting it, putting it into a sheet just for you. So it's pretty cool. It's definitely unique in this day and age of mass production, and the mass production that generally comes, out of other countries in particular. So
Right. And where are you guys manufacturing at right now? Because you're in like two locations, right?
Yeah, our main manufacturing facility is in Baja. So we're about 9 miles across the border, just dipping into Mexico, Tijuana area. And we've been there since 2005. And then our main office and distribution is up here in Carlsbad, about an hour from the plant.
Okay. So you guys don't do anything in Carlsbad? I mean, on the manufacturing side?
Not on the manufacturing, we do sample fulfillment and obviously distribution, shipping, logistics, things like that. And obviously all the design work and all the creative side of the business is up here. Not that Mexico is not creative, but as far as product development,
yeah,
it starts up here and it is integrated down in Mexico with the team as like right now we're in the middle of a couple different new product developments for 2021. So it's always working hand to hand together. But yeah, as far as production standpoint, everything's happening down there.
Yeah. What's that like kind of being in two different places? I mean, I'm sure the majority of people that work in Mexico just speak Spanish. They don't probably speak a lot of English. Has that been a learning curve?
Well, it's been a learning curve. I think for us, it's just feels like home. I mean, the culture of Mexico is fantastic. Just the people that work really hard down there. They're committed, they're loyal. We have a very similar culture down in Mexico with our factory that we do up here. We tried that, I guess to be intentional about it by saying, hey, when we go down to Mexico, we want to make sure that we're doing things that we do up here, which is having, fun events like Brian talked about. We'll have the entire plant, like for Mother's Day, we'll have a full catered luncheon. We'll do a number of things. We'll do health fair days where the team can bring in their family and they can get medical checkups, dental, even hair appointments, things like that. So there's a number of things. We probably have a philanthropy program down there. We volunteer both in Mexico and up here. It doesn't really feel different because we've been living this world. It feels like one company to us. We're so integrated, and we're down there. There's people that are from our office that are down there every week. Nowadays with Zoom and video technology and whatnot, it's very easy to stay connected. I'm probably on video calls, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a day with a blend between people in our office in Mexico, or maybe even an outside sales office that are working. So
yeah. Well,
that's, I mean, it's
well,
very natural for us.
yeah, and I would say it's being in Southern California, there's no shortage of people who are bilingual, right? And I was talking to our IT manager who was born and raised in TJ, and now he lives here, and his full-time office is here as our corporate headquarters, and his English is perfect. And he said, growing up in TJ, there was a huge emphasis on being bilingual because it opened up more opportunities for you to work for American companies that were producing. And he said back then it was pretty rare. But he said now, if you're someone who's been to college or is someone who's on that track to have a more of a management position in an American company, like they're all bilingual. Like there's just, that's just what's expected in that culture in Tijuana. And that's just something that's been emphasized by parents sending their kids to school. So, all of our upper management in TJ, their English is way better than my Spanish. Let's put it that way. And it's, there's occasionally the communication, misunderstanding, especially in emails, because written word, isn't always the easiest thing. But, that's more the exception than the rule. So yeah, it's been, I don't know. I think it's great. I love it. I love being exposed to the culture. That's one of the things I really miss the most about this whole COVID thing is I haven't been able to go down to the factory since it all started. I haven't been there in months, and I was going there once or twice a week prior to that. So
they have the same kind of drive, like staying late, working hard, hitting deadlines. Like you can always guarantee that like Oscar as an example, is the leader down there. He always
fantastic.
He always over delivers, and like, hey, I think this is what we can do, and he always hits that and more. And Yeah, I mean, they're just like family as well. And like most of the management team down there, we've been there
Yeah.
almost, 14, 15 years. So, we've had very low turnover in our key positions there. So we do things well. We try to stay abreast of what's going on down there in the market in terms of pay, compensation, benefits, and just making it a great place to work. So right now it's tough. Right now it's tough just to get new people. And you have spikes where it's like easy to find people to work, and other times where it's just very competitive. But we try to do a good job with that. So,
Yeah.
but
I
as
mean,
far
we've
yeah,
we've put in a lot of precautions in place with people, right? Face masks, face coverings, trying to maintain social distance, trying to make sure the workers down there are as protected as they can be during this time. But some people are still just, they don't want to show up and be in a factory where there's a couple hundred people.
or they don't actually. Some of the response has been, we don't like all the protective equipment you have to wear.
Yeah, that you're right. Well, and it's hot. It's hot right now. And a
Yeah,
glass factory when it's, it's not that hot here, right? But when it's 90
10
degrees
degrees hotter makes a difference.
and you're in a glass factory where you're running furnaces, right? And it's 10, 15 degrees hotter inside than it is outside. And you have to wear a face mask and a face shield and long sleeves and jeans and closed-toed shoes because you're in a factory with a bunch of glass. Yeah, it can be pretty toasty. So,
Yeah, it seems like the ones that are more adamant about the mask are the ones that only have to wear it for about 2 to 5 minutes a day.
yeah.
I don't see what the big
well,
deal is. Oh, because you have to wear it the 10, 15 minutes you're in Target.
Right.
That's not the same.
People
But
have this perception that companies go to Mexico because it's the Wild West, right? Because you can do whatever you want down there and you can abuse your employees and right. And you just want to not pay people what they're worth. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, I think in our factory in Mexico, we've had to comply with all the COVID restrictions and have inspections. And I mean, it's a very serious thing. They're taking it very, very seriously. And there's a lot of rules about around being a maquiladora with the health and safety and protection and labor laws with the workforce down there. So they're pretty well taken care of. It's cool to see. But I know, unfortunately, right now it's not a comfortable place to work. It's not.
Yeah.
But I think the people who've been there long enough realize that summer will end, and they do like working there because of all the other things in the culture. And but yeah, it's been tough to get new people in.
right. And speaking of the Wild West, we know that Mexico definitely isn't perfect either. So, have you guys ever ran into any situations? Because most of the information I get about Mexico is from Netflix. So I'm just curious, you guys ever run into any kind of weird situations that you've had to get creative about getting your way out of?
Oh, that just brought up another thought in my head. Yeah, we got a few, I'd say. We got a few stories for sure. So,
Lay it on us.
all right. Well, I should tell the story about, was it Trevor? Should I tell that one?
That's a good one.
All right.
That's a fun one.
Okay, so we had a client from Hawaii, and this guy's he's originally from New Zealand.
He's a Kiwi.
And
Yeah.
I'll say his name. I'll just say it's Trevor. Trevor, if you're out there listening,
Crazy Kiwi.
love you, babe. So yeah, it's a crazy Kiwi. He's down, and the Hawaiian guys were down. We took him down to the factory, and then Jim, our sales director at the time, went down to Rosarito, go to Ortega's, get some lobster, tequila, and all that. So Jim was the good tour host, if you will, except for the fact he let those guys have a little too much to drink. So anyway, fast forward to getting to the border. So they're getting to the border, and first problem is they run out of gas. So they run out of gas in some neighborhood, and then one of them decides, like, I got to go to the bathroom. And so they go find a place to go to the bathroom, and the cops pull up, and they're like, okay, you guys are in trouble now because you shouldn't be doing that. So I think they got hit up for about $300 to get out of that jam. Because in Mexico, if you get busted by the police, usually you just try to offer the least amount of money as possible, but don't go downtown and go through that rigmarole. Because they'll tie you up for a while. Not tie up, literally tie you up, but they'll put you in jail for a while until you come up with some money. So usually just find a way to pay them off. So that cost the gym a couple $100. Then they found a way. I don't know how they got gas. They got gas. They got back in the car. They're in the main line. So they're in the main line. And then for whatever reason, Trevor realizes, oh my gosh, I don't have my passport, or my passport's expired, or some crazy
I
story.
think his visa was expired
His
or something
visa
like that.
expired.
Yeah, because he's not
Yeah.
he's from New
And
Zealand.
he's from New Zealand.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
And he's had too much tequila, so he just literally goes bonkers. He jumps out of the car and starts running.
Yeah, his idea was just run through the border.
Yeah.
Just run past the border patrol. He was going to make it in his mind.
What?
He just runs, so the other guys get out and they have to go like literally tackle him and drag him back into the car. So that was a whole ordeal. Do you remember how that one ended? That was
He vomited in the
yeah, my
door.
wife found out the next day.
Yeah, he vomited in the door panel,
Oh.
like the little cup holder door thing. And then somehow when they got to the border, Jeff talked his way through with Trevor. Like I never got the full story, but somehow these sales guys talked their way through the border patrol checkpoint with a dead drunk Kiwi who had puked in the door. I think the border patrol guy probably saw the puke and just didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
It was like he'd puked on himself, puked on the door, and he was just like, whatever, keep going. Like just waved him through.
I remember we had the van the next day or a couple of days later, and it was cleaned out, but my wife took the van and she was like, man, it smells horrible. And I'm like, what happened? So I had to break the news. She was a little bit upset about that, but
Probably sold a tile job to Border Patrol too while he was at it.
Oh man.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, he was just gonna run for it. That was his big plan. Was gonna run.
I got at least 2 other Mexico stories that are worthwhile. The other one would also involve Jim, our fearless leader of sales back at the time. And so he took a whole sales crew out, and there can be a little bit of challenge trying to get back in the border. We use a line called the Sentry line, which essentially is like the global entry. So if you have global entry or a Sentry pass, you can get through a specialized line that'll get you across the border pretty quick. If not, you could be in a line that could be an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, just really depends. So we also have our trucks go through, and they have a whole separate entrance that's very close. It's literally right next to the Sentry line. So the massive trucks are coming across, bringing goods in the US, and they're usually very long lines. You might have a truck being there for 8 hours, or sometimes it won't even get across in a day.
Wow.
And so Jim made a wrong turn and somehow ended up in the truck line. And so he's half pregnant in the truck line and just stuck. The trucks are behind him. He can't get out. He was in there for, I think, 6 hours. And then like they literally couldn't get out. They couldn't leave. They were trying to go up and get out of the car and talk to somebody. One of the sales gals had to go to the bathroom. It was just a hot mess. And there was really nothing to do. They just had to hang in there and bear with it and make it through. But I'm like, Jim, how did you get stuck in a trucking line? I mean, there's probably 300 trucks there, maybe more. I don't know.
I could one of the more adventurous things to do is drive down there for the first time, because once you get to know the roads, it's pretty simple to get to the factory and get back. But there's no reliable street signs, and some of those intersections are like, is that lane coming towards me, or am I supposed to get in that? I can't tell. I mean, it's just like there's dividers and there's like 4 lanes, and you don't know which one to go into. There's no arrows, no signs, and you just hope you don't end up in oncoming traffic. But yeah. No, you should tell a story about the big hotel project that was like.
Do we have time for that?
Hell yeah, we do.
Yep.
Let's do it.
Narcos.
I was trying to get by without that one.
I know you were, but I'm gonna call you out on it.
Okay, that's
because it's a good one.
Funny. I tell it all the time, but yeah. So we had this project. Down there. It was actually it was a water application. So it was a fountain in Mexico. It was for a resort hotel that was being built, and it was a like kind of a rectangular oval. I would call it more of an oval shaped pedestal, maybe 3-4 feet high. And what they wanted was they wanted to use our 3x3 bronze product all around the base of the pedestal. There's a large statue with a camel and some famous conquistador up there. And they wanted to have the edge perimeter. They wanted it to have a curved edge, so water would just naturally kind of flow into like a sheet or a curtain of water. You see those kind of fountains, here and there in cities and whatnot. Beautiful. So they're like, hey, can you guys use your glass and make that kind of curved shape piece and do that? So long story short, I won't get into all that. There was a huge ordeal to do that. So we ended up making some pieces. We actually, well, the thing that's kind of cool about it is we actually took out one of Boyce's old rolling machines and we rolled sheets of glass. We iridized it, no personal protection equipment, albeit. When we made these pieces, we refired them, we bent them and curved them, and we made these really complex curved 18-inch by, call it 14-inch pieces. And so we built this like elaborate, like essentially looked like a wood toilet. And we built this like large tank and we put the piece out in front of it and created a well underneath. And so we went down there. I basically stood on top of the pedestal with about 15 engineers there in Mexico. And I got them to bring me about 15 buckets, 5-gallon buckets of water. And I'm literally pouring the water into this vessel. And then the water literally would go down the tank and up and over and sheet out. And that was our proof of concept. Like, yeah, it works. It's great. So that being said, they're like, great, we're good. We're going to go do the deal. I'm like, okay, I need to get the deposit. You know, I need to go get a check, or are you going to wire me money or whatever it was? So, okay, yeah, come with me. So I go with Kathy, who's kind of our sales agent, and we go up into the office. And so we're talking in Spanish, and she's translating. I know a little bit of Spanish, but kind of follow along. And so he's like, okay, everything's good. Here's the contract. And then he reaches behind him and he grabs literally a suitcase and he opens it up, thump. And then inside the suitcase, there are stacks of $100 bills that are wrapped. And he reaches in there and he pulls out like 4 huge stacks of cash. And I'm like, Kathy, like, can you count that? Can you tell me how much this is? Are we good here? Like, okay, we're all good, you know. The guy seemed cool enough, but you know, I'm like, okay, this is weird.
Yeah,
maybe that's just the way things go. I'm a little bit naive, you know. This is mid 90s. I'm, you know,
Is tax free?
not quite 30 yet. So I'm like, okay, I guess this is what happens in Mexico. And so then I go to Kathy, I go, hey, in Spanish, can you ask the guy if he's got like a bag or something so I can like put the money in? I had no briefcase or anything. So I literally wrapped in a bag. I stuck it down my pants. I'm like, Kathy, let's go. So I go, right. And this is like, literally, it's like $10,000 in cash.
No, yeah, here's $10,000 in cash. Now you got to get out of Mexico.
Yeah. So then my brain is like going, oh my God, like they're going to know there's going to be an inside job. I'm going to get out of here. Someone's going to like stop me on the road. We're going to get robbed. So I pick up Boyce. He's got his cool Porsche glasses. He looks like maybe he smoked a little bit of pot. And I'm like, oh God, great. We've got a stone partner who looks like a drug kingpin. And me in a 85 Toyota Camry, which is super sexy. And we're driving it back to the border. And my mind's going, oh my God, we're going to get killed. They're going to stop us. Someone knows about this. And then that kind of dissipates. And we're like, all right, now how do I actually get across the border? Because like I got a big wad of cash. So we pull over and we're like, okay, this is smart. Let's take the money and let's spread it all over different parts of the car. That way, if they look, they'll never find it. So
that's a good idea.
We do that, and miraculously, we get through the border. We stay in the long line. It was before we knew about Century, and we get through the border, and all was good. But later, I kind of pieced it together, and I'm like, that, you know, I went back to that hotel, and like there never seemed to be anybody staying in there, but there was a lot of construction, a lot of money being spent. I'm like, do you think this has anything to do with the drug cartels? So we never really officially knew, but we're pretty sure that it was probably a cartel type project.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
I had a lot of sleepless nights going, what if the tile breaks? I don't even know if that like edge curtain thing's even going to work. They're going to come find me and kill my family. This is bad. A little hypochondriac, a little bit of a Woody Allen.
We gave you $10,000.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Marty Bird was their accountant.
Marty Bird. Yeah, that's what I felt like. I felt like Marty Bird. You know, like seemingly a smart finance guy has gone to the dark side. So,
do you think the accountant could at least give you some tips in bringing stacks of money back into the U.S.?
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
As soon as that briefcase popped out, I was like, we're out of here. It's time. It's go time. Yeah. No, but you know, honestly, you know, that's working crazy. In Mexico, it's not like that. That was a fun kind of example, but it's really we're in a very structured business environment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are And in fact, it's been better because, as everyone knows, manufacturing has really moved offshore for the last 20 plus years. So whereas we had a good base of getting labor and whatnot in Oceanside and Carlsbad for years, and it's just gotten progressively harder. There's more challenges manufacturing in Carlsbad. Just not as many people that wanted that kind of a job. And in fact, in Mexico, you have so much manufacturing. You have people that are trained leaders and line leaders and supervisors and engineers that's what they do. And it's been a really good move for us.
Yeah. Now, those are all funny stories, but in the 14 years I've worked here and I've been going back and forth, other than like occasionally feeling like I might be lost because the roads are, just nonsensical. I haven't run into like any really shady situations, right? You get down to the factory, you stop at the local taco stand. Everybody's super nice. Food's amazing. And then you head back to the border and get out and you're out, you're back across in the afternoon. And, I think people make it a focus on the negative a lot more than the positives, right? And from what I've seen, like I said, the locals, the taco stands, they're all super appreciative of the business. And we go to Poblanitos and throw the taquero an extra $5, and he makes sure we always get to the front of the line. He sees us coming. And it's
Just
awesome.
that name, that
I love
sounds
it down there.
amazing.
We have a place in Encinitas called the Taco Stand, and literally there's a line out the door all the time, any time of the day. And I've been there, and it's really good, but it's essentially the same tacos that you're getting in Mexico, except you're spending $4.50 a taco or spending 80 cents on a taco. Yeah. So I would prefer to go down to Mexico.
Absolutely.
Have you watched those
a birria street
documentaries
taco
about
on the way to
tacos in
work
Mexico?
is the best breakfast you can ever have.
You guys ever watch any of those documentaries like on Netflix with the tacos in Mexico?
I haven't seen those.
I've seen a little bit of it. Yeah.
Dude, they're awesome, man. That's crazy what some of those people do. They even they were showing the people like the fleet that goes out on the bicycles and they stop kind of like a stand, but they're just like putting them together. I'm like, shit, those look like best tacos I've ever seen. That's like gourmet taco.
Yeah, it's a whole nother level, man. Like the birria tacos that we get, there's a little spot like right on the way, right? And it's traditionally a breakfast food, right? So we stop in the morning and get those on the way to the factory. I can tell you those tacos, like if you served those here at a really high-end Mexican restaurant, people would pay a lot of money for it and be happy about it. They would just go home telling their friends about how great these tacos were, right? And we're paying like $1.50 a taco.
Dude, bring it to Scottsdale. We need some good Mexican
You guys
food.
would love it, yeah.
It's a different level of like dedication to the craft of the taco.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there's the street tacos, but a lot of people don't realize that there's quite a cuisine environment down in Tijuana and Mexico in general, like very highly rated restaurants down there that'll compete with the best of the best.
Yeah,
in fact, the Caesar salad was invented in Tijuana.
Really?
Cesar?
It was.
It's a Cesar salad.
Cesar.
Got it.
That was wrong,
Yes.
but
Just
Not Italian.
no, they were actually showing some people that like some of the top chefs that work in some of the restaurants in Mexico. They got their start from working the family taco shop or different things like that. Like there's this, one of my favorites was this automotive shop, and at night, every night, like it totally flips into a taco shop. Like they like pull the screen across and it turns into a taco shop, and it's just like, man, they got business 24 hours a day to get your car fixed, and then 5 o'clock hits, it's taco time. I'm like, damn, that's pretty.
Well,
that's pretty
in the
cool.
U.S. we have the food truck, right? And I guess in like places like New York, they still have the carts, but the carts are a big deal down there too, right? Especially in the manufacturing area. In the industrial area, it's called El Florido. There's Hyundai, Coca-Cola, Sony, like there's Samsung. There's a lot of big factories in that area. So you can imagine the influx of workers in the morning and then leaving in the night and then shift change. A lot of these factories run multiple shifts a day. So there's all these little stands, right? And they're lunch and breakfast spots where people go. And there are definitely some family run kind of entrepreneurs who just start and they're like, hey, Mom, your taco recipes are amazing. People would pay for these, and they get a little stand and they set up a sign and people are there buying tacos all day. And I don't know. I love it. I love the food down there. It's my favorite part of going, other than seeing the people at our factory. But
For sure.
Sounds awesome. We always do this. We start talking about food around
I know.
lunchtime. Like,
Welcome to
all
Taco
right.
Chasers.
Time to cut this
Taco
episode short.
Chasers.
Yeah. There we go.
That's a good idea.
Turn
Let's
this
chase some tacos.
Yeah, after 3 o'clock turns into a taco stand. No more podcasting, just tacos. So, where can people reach out to you guys, get more information, website, social media, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, our website's, glasstile.com, which is kind of cool because
Yeah,
literally nobody had glass tile back then and nobody was on the internet. So we were kind of the first to do both of those things.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah,
It's
you
just
can find out a lot of
glasstile.com.
information. It's easy to remember, just glasstile.com. We have all of our tile products on there. We've got applications. We've got sections that show different pools, finished pools. There's a whole nice section on installation, technical support.
Yep.
They could certainly call our factory, call our offices here, and we can always help out if they're looking for, trying to find a dealer or looking for a specific product. We can certainly help just by calling in our general number, and we can always provide that information for you if that helps. Taylor does a great job. She does all our social media, so we're on Instagram and Facebook mostly. Tay, do we have anything else that we're working on? Is that it?
Working on
Pinterest.
Socially?
What
else do we do socially?
We like to post a lot of behind the scenes stuff for our factory. People like to.
Yeah. So she was just saying that we do a lot of, if you jump on Facebook or follow us on Facebook or Instagram, you'll see.
Yeah, Instagram, you get a lot of little behind the scenes videos and sneak peeks, stuff like that. For anybody who wants to go find technical information, installation, there's a shortcut. You can find it by going to glasstile.com, but there's a shortcut. It's install in ogt.com. So it's just a little shorter URL, goes right to our installation page that has all of our PDF technical documentation. And there is specific information for pools. I know this is a pool audience, so our pool and water feature installation instructions are there, as well as our pool tile maintenance guide, which I can't help but plug. So you can always go to Ocean Care Products as well to check out some of our maintenance stuff. OceanCareProducts.com, I should say.
Yeah, plus we got a bunch of videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
So install videos and other things.
Very good.
Very
Well,
cool.
Thank you guys very much. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to doing more episodes with you all and hopefully making a trip out to OGT so we can get a better sort of, behind the scenes look at everything you have going on. This has been a ton of fun, especially hearing all the history. It's been really cool.
That'd be great. So we'll plan a full day for that. So we'll certainly get you to the factory. And then afterward, we usually like to take people to Rosarito in a van and get them tequila and lobster. So if you guys are down, we know how to get across the border. It should be fine.
Dude, that's all I'm thinking about right now.
man,
For
I
some
know.
reason, I see square tiles with like little tacos on them. Like that's what's on my mind right now. Like, stay focused. Tiles, no tacos. That would, hey, if I got a new pool built, I would want glass tile with taco pattern all the way across.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Don't spill your taco by the pool.
Our new line, El Taquero.
Very
All
good.
Thanks,
for having
guys.
us, you guys. It was great.
Yeah,
I
that was
hope to
fun.
get out to your place as well. Do this in person, either in Mexico or in Arizona. It'd be awesome.
Sounds
Cool.
good.
Hey, Pool Chasers. Thanks for checking out this episode. Did you know that each episode has its own page on our website? This is where you can find more information about the guest and episode topic, as well as all the resources that we discuss throughout the show. To get to the webpage, click the link below. Also below, you will find links to the sponsors of the show, as well as links to follow us on our social media channels. On our channels, you will find some of our favorite clips and bonus material. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Our tag is Pool Chasers. We also have a Facebook group for the Pool Chasers community. Here you will find like-minded professionals all looking to make each other better. One last thing. If the episode has brought you value, please check out our Patreon page to support us. And if you could please rate and review the podcast, we would love to hear what your favorite topics are. Thank you for your time and your ear.
See you out there, Pool Chasers.